Welcome to the Resilient Reiner podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Burnett, and today we're privileged to be joined by a true master of the craft, Jeff Wadman. With a distinguished career that spans both reining and roping, Jeff has not only competed locally and at the highest levels, including the prestigious World Series for team roping in Las Vegas, but he's also dedicated himself to coaching and mentoring non-pro riders to achieve their own successes. I am thrilled to have Jeff join us for today's episode and share his unique perspective of not only competition, but also the trainer's perspective on non-pros, competition, goals, and why riders forget left and right when it comes time to compete. In our conversation with Jeff, we explore the oft overlooked mental side of training and competition. How does Jeff address the unique mental challenges faced by both horse and rider in the high pressure world of reining and roping events? What strategies does he employ to foster focus, confidence, and resilience in the face of setbacks and adversity? And how does he cultivate trust and partnership between horse and rider, essential ingredients for success in the arena? You'll love Jeff's insights into coaching non-pros and as a competitor, and you're going to appreciate his great way of just putting things that'll have you feeling more at ease just hanging out with us. Saddle up. Let's go. Welcome to the Resilient Reiner, the premier podcast focused on mental performance for equestrians and improved horse show performance. Whether you're a rookie reiner or a seasoned competitor, this show is for riders who want to take their skills to the next level and achieve their full potential in the show ring. I'm Nicole Burnett, and I'm a master mindset coach who's obsessed with helping you achieve all those horse dreams you always thought were impossible. Join me each week to develop a show-ready mindset and gain the competitive edge you need to compete with confidence. Well, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Oh, my
pleasure. For doing this. And so in this podcast today, we're going to focus on Jeff's just unique perspective, both as a competitor, and I'm particularly grateful for his perspective as a coach of non-pros and what the things that he observes and how he coaches his students, because being in Jeff's local area, I know that his students do very well. So,
thank you.
Okay, well, let's just give you a broad question of how do you address the mental aspects of training for reining, for roping, and how do you take that for horse and rider?
So mentally, as far as for me or for the horses, or both?
Both.
So my program is revolved around, I heard a trainer a long time ago, his name is Bob Loomis. He said that when he goes to a competition, he's looking for the happiest, healthiest horses there, and he knows that those are the horses that he has to beat. And so mentally for my horses, I want to get them into a perspective that if there were 10 people lined up tomorrow that those horses had to choose from, I want to end every day with the idea that they would choose me again out of the 10 people lined up tomorrow. And so as far as their mental capacity, that's what I try to end every day with. I hope that they appreciate the way that they've been taught enough that they'd want to learn from me again. The same thing kind of goes for my non-pros and things like that, but me personally, I try to leave as much emotion out of this. I try to see the horses for what they are. They're a barn animal. They're a creature. They see the world completely different than me. I try to leave out that they are trying to offend me by not catching on to what I'm trying to tell them. I figure if there's frustrations in their neck of the woods, that's because my questions weren't clear enough. It's not their job to decipher what I'm thinking. My job as a horseman is to decipher what they're thinking and know how to better help them. So mentally for me, I'm, as bad as it sounds, I'm trying every day to outthink a barn animal. So.
Yeah, no, but I hear you saying that it's very much about the horse doesn't have a grand plan to screw up a ride or to do evil by you, that if they're not doing what you want, you probably haven't set them up or explained it correctly, and so you have to be very neutral so that you can do your job.
Correct. Yeah. I think when you start adding emotion and you start adding anger, frustration, it obviously translates into the horse as well. And I just try, whether it's my non-pros or horses, to learn several different ways to teach something, just so if one way's not working, well, let's try it a different way to hopefully you understand. I personally have been a student. I've been frustrated learning different subjects. The horses are the same way. I just try to understand where I was as a student trying to learn concepts that were hard for me to understand, and I try to treat the horses the same way.
Yeah. Well, I did want to ask you about, for the horses, what sort of strategies do you use to help the horses maintain focus and confidence, say, and especially in a high pressure situation like a competition, because that's
sure. That's a great question. So my program is a little different than some programs simply because I like to do a lot of different things with them. Mm-hmm. Even the reiners, we have a flag, a cutting flag that we work on them, and we'll chase the roping dummy. We try to get them to enjoy their job. I'm a firm believer that if you want a horse to be really good at one thing, teach him how to do many things. And once they learn how to handle different pressure situations, especially when, like in the roping or the cutting, I'm saying, horse, you do your job. In the reining, I'm saying, horse, you need to listen to me. So that there's a lot of different aspects for them to mentally work through that I think helps them. And then during the summer times, we take them on rides up the hill and freshen their mind. I think keeping their minds fresh is a big thing. The real challenge is making practice harder than the show. If you're riding the horse really nice and kind here and you don't show him what you're going to show him at the show, then when he gets to the show, he's going to hate going to shows because you put way more pressure on him there than you did here. He's got to learn that here, and the show should be a day off. So as far as I'm concerned, they learn the pressures at home, and that's why we do so much to keep their brains fresh, is because we do push them. In order for them to find out what their full potential is, we have to help them find it.
Yeah, no, I love hearing that as the trainer perspective, because for me personally, one of the great challenges of my life is self-compassion. And like my husband constantly reminds me that people only change when they feel good. So be a little kinder to yourself, be a little kinder to other people. Like, when you feel good, you'll change. And
sure.
I hear you in different words saying that about the horses, that you want the horse to feel good, and that's part of keeping things fresh and doing different things, and you're putting them in a whole bunch of different situations so that they're practicing facing new and scary things, and that it's okay, and they're building that confidence, and they're learning to build focus, and that you're setting them up to do well at show by having more pressure at home than when they go show.
Well said. Yes, so absolutely.
Yeah, that was a very succinct answer.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, so tell me, for yourself, what sort of mental preparation, if any, do you do before you go compete?
So I exercise in the gym at least 3 days a week, and I feel like doing the hard things in the morning, that's the biggest thing. Religiously speaking and everything else, I try to give my time to deity and everything that I can in the morning, as well as exercise and all that stuff. If those things are a part of my life, I think they all translate into mentally. And same thing goes at work. There's a mental part of riding the tough ones first and getting through the tough ones first before any other thing happens in the day. So I think we train ourselves mentally all day long, whether we're training ourselves to be lazy or we're training ourselves to be more prolific at what we're trying to do.
Yeah, if I were to summarize, it sounds like you're saying a lot of just that it's less anything specific right before a run or before a show, and more of the habits and the routines that you have day in and day out.
For sure. I mean, as far as the practice and things goes, I mean, maybe the week before a show, I will push the horses a little harder. I'll push myself a little harder. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, that stuff's been going on the whole time leading up to the show. And so mentally, I just make sure that I feel good. Yeah. I feel good. So a guy once told me that if you feel good and you look good, then you'll perform well. Yeah. So that's kind of the idea I go behind.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It makes me think of just in terms of feeling good. I was reading a book recently, and it was all these stories from Olympic athletes, and some of the very top athletes were saying things like that like the week before the Olympics, they're going to the beach. They are like before they're going in to compete, they're chatting about nonsense things on the sidelines because they're like, I need to feel calm. I need to feel good. I've done what I can, and
yeah, that's profound.
Not psych myself out.
Sure, I think there's a big part of that. There's a big part of that. Sure.
Yeah. Well, so how do you help your non-pros in terms of having pre-run anxiety is pretty normal,
sure.
More normal than not. So how do you help any of your riders with their nerves before they compete?
Awesome question. My biggest thing is I ask them if they've ever ridden a horse alone in an arena before and how different it is to have a guy sitting in the chair riding that horse in the arena. The reality is that when you go to that show, everybody else has the same anxieties, and they're not usually watching what you're doing. They're really focusing on what they're doing. So pretty much you're out there riding by yourself. But you might as well just get used to just going out and having the arena all to yourself. But there is no substitute for going and being in the show pen. You have to learn how to go in and manage your thoughts. I make the joke that a lot of my non-pros, that the minute they go through the gate, they leave their brain right with me when they leave. They forget what left and right is. They forget where the stops are. And, different things like that. Take deep breaths, take one maneuver at a time, and we practice that here. We break down every maneuver and just say, okay, show me the new maneuver as if you're going to show it. And sometimes it takes 4 or 5 times for him to get it right, and that's okay. But you get one shot at a show. So I just tell people, see it for what it is. You're out there showing your horse, and you're out there alone in an arena. Nothing's changed except there's a judge sitting in a chair. Yeah. Just go show the horse that you have. That's kind of my thing.
Well, if I were to kind of identify some of those pieces too, it's breathing, which is huge and is often forgotten.
Yeah.
And also just the practicing like you're going to go show, which I think can also be overlooked.
For sure.
Which is, I think, particularly for the reining, but I think it's overlooked. And so the idea of even just telling someone, do this like you're going to go show instead of, go do 4 spins, it adds an extra layer of pressure, which is part of that practicing and doing your best to recreate that at home.
Well, to that point, whether it's reining or roping, we've had this discussion to death, me and some friends. There's a lot of people that can ride reining horses really well, and there's a lot of people who can rope extremely well.
Yeah.
There are very few winners.
Yep.
And so why is that? Well, first of all, it's because they don't practice like they're going to show. Yeah. They don't make the effort to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to see how good my circles could be. When we're practicing for a roping, we set up a barrier. We say, okay, let's see how fast we can rope 4 steers. If you can't rope 4 steers at home, what makes you think you're going to go to the roping and do it? Yeah. And so that same rules apply to anything. If you don't practice like you're going to go show, if you don't try to show them, you're doing yourself and your horse an injustice. Yep. So that would definitely be something I would do, is, especially if a show's coming up, practice like you're going to compete there.
What are some of your favorite ways to bring the show pen home and add that pressure at home?
Awesome. Well, as far as the roping goes, I make sure that we have a competitive thing. I've actually had more pressure on me in this arena roping for Cokes against another team than I've had backing in the box in Las Vegas for 100,000. I mean, you learn to compete. You learn to be in a competitive state, but once again, there's only one way to practice competing, and that's to back in the box at the big ropings and be in the arena at the big reinings. You just got to practice being there, and the more you're there, the more accustomed you'll be to it. So if you're wanting to go, you need to go. Whether you're in a position to win or not, you would need to know what it feels like to be there.
Yep. And I'm going to throw in, I feel like it is so important to go show, and then I love to find other ways to do it. Like if you're going to show, at whatever arena, and you know that there's an open series, or that there is, if you're doing the reining, but there's a ranch riding series, and you can still go compete there, like that you're still getting in the arena and you're still getting that practice.
Sure.
That brings up so many of the feelings. And I love to bring up, like, go to a show, have the experience of being there, feeling it in your body, seeing what you do. And then you take that experience from being at the show and you use it to practice at home, to visualize at home, to remember exactly what the ground is like, to remember the color of the paints and the smells in that arena, and to be able to do that at home. Because if I can't calmly ride a run at home, just imagining it, what makes me think that I'm going to go and suddenly do better at a show? So I really love to just combine it to supercharge that experience of absolutely go show, go compete, put yourself in those big shows, just do it. And also do what you can at home for the mental preparation, right? Be preparing, be visualizing, helping yourself develop those neural pathways, helping your body learn to process those emotions at home. I think this is like a good question. I'll just jump in with, so because we just had some issues with the recording, and I know I'm feeling kind of amped now. So imagine we're at a horse show. What would you say to help me to deal with my nerves if like we're about to go in the pen and, I'm feeling up here?
Sure. This happens.
It does. It happens to me.
Sometimes all of a sudden you go to a show and your horse's left spin doesn't work anymore. The reality is that you're at the show and you came to show. You worked all this time to come to the show, and then you're going to let your emotions get in the way.
Maybe.
Well, those would be questions that I'd ask.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to diminish somebody's feelings, but all of the time that I've been chewing their butt at the arena or whatever and trying to push them to their next goal, and then all of a sudden they get to the show and they're going to let something like that stand in their way. I would definitely ask them that question. And then I'd just say, go take a break. Go walk, take your horse on a walk. Go think about something else for a minute, and then bring back your horse and show the horse that you brought here. There's very little that you're going to do to change at the show. So go take a deep breath, try to get in a different mindset, go call your husband, call your wife, whatever you need to do, and then just relax. And then just go show the horse you have. But I definitely say don't waste all the practice that you've made to let your emotions get to you there. Practice handling your emotions somewhere else. Don't do it at the show right before you go compete. You're going to have emotions there whether you like it or not. You better learn how to handle them and be able to just go do your job. So we had to go to school sometimes when we weren't wanting to go to school, and I have to come to work sometimes when I don't really want to go to work. And you have to handle your emotions, and you have to learn how to get through that. It might be the best time you've ever shown. You go in there all frustrated, and you might make mental note of that.
So I agree, saying too, just reminder that that emotions are going to happen. It's part of being human. So don't be afraid of those emotions or having them come up in everyday life, because you got to have practice at handling them.
But absolutely.
So anytime anything doesn't go right, anytime there's traffic or slow down on the freeway, what a great opportunity to just like
Well said.
practice your Zen, you know?
You absolutely.
Like, thank you. The universe is looking out for you.
There you go.
The universe is like, oh, you're going to show in a couple months. Like, you need to better get frustrated today.
You need to make mental notes of that stuff.
Good. Okay, so what role does trust play in the relationship between a rider and their horse?
I just think that where horses are terrible leaders, that the person's always got to be the one to lead them. It doesn't matter what the experience of the horse is in the show pen or not. My experience has been that even if it's a seasoned show horse and somebody who's a beginner, if they're counting on the horse to go show for them, it really generally doesn't work out that well. People need to learn to be the leader on these horses. I use the analogy of the substitute teacher. In school, you generally never treated the substitute teacher the same way you treated the main teacher. And oftentimes, I'm the main teacher because I'm trying to show these horses where they need to be, what line they need to walk. And then the substitute teacher shows up once or twice a week to take lessons. They have to be able to build the relationship with the horse that I'm trying to create for them. That's my job, is to train the horse for them. It is their job to make the horse their own. And so I think trust is a huge thing. I mean, horses, that's the main thing of how horses work. If they don't trust you, they're not going to perform to you at the best level they can. There's just no way. They're only going to do what you allow them to do. Horses ride or digress to the level of the rider. And most of that has to do with the trust you place in them and the trust they place in you.
Makes me think of how horses, like, you know, somebody's got to be on the lookout for a predator. So if you're in charge, then you can be on the lookout for a predator.
For sure.
But if they're in charge, they got to keep themselves safe.
Well, 100%. They have to look to you as the emergency blanket, and if you aren't, then they're going to search for that some other way. And if they do it on their own, that's usually when people get hurt. So that's been my experience anyway.
Yeah. So with all of the setbacks and ups and downs and the mistakes that can just happen in training and competition, what do you do to help support riders to bounce back from a setback?
Well, one of my favorite quotes from a guy by the name of Ogden, he said that there's only two types of horse people: those who are humble and those who are about to be. And anybody who's been around horses long enough should understand that if you're going to be around animals, and especially barn animals, they're going to teach you some humility, or you better just learn to be humble and understand that sometimes things don't go your way. And sometimes you have to take your turn. The reality is if you did your best and in your preparations to make that horse ready for the show, and you go there and you don't have a good show, join the club. We have jackets. They're pink. I make that joke, but the reality is that there's a lot of people in that same situation.
I feel like people would buy that merch.
I might start that plan. But I think that people need to understand that to win consistently in this game, in the reining, you walk in the pen and there's two brains and two hearts that walk in that arena. You have to be pretty compatible to get something done. In the team rope, there's 5 brains that run down the arena every time a header nods his head. So to be consistent at those and to win consistent, you have to have a little bit of luck in your favor. But you better be practicing and doing what other people aren't willing to do. And so that's where I draw the line at is, okay, so you had a bad show. You have to wait another 3 weeks to go to another one, right? And now we have some things that we know that we need to go work on. So let's go work on it. Enjoy the journey. This is going to be okay. You're still going to get where you need to be. Let's focus on your goal. Even though it didn't happen this time, let's focus on your goal. So that's what I would say.
So I know that you've done a bunch of competing. Can you share any personal experiences where the mental aspect played a significant role for you?
Sure, absolutely. And I've made mental notes of this, and I've actually have written notes of this, but back in 2021, I was the high call, high team back in Las Vegas at the biggest roper in the world. And me and my partner we were the fastest time on 3 steers going back to the last round. And I remember walking through the tunnel and remembering all the preparations that I had made, all of the things that I had done leading up to that point that had got me to that point. And I was able to kind of flush my mind of, don't do this, and let's not do this, let's not do this. In those situations, I'm trying to think to myself, I can't wait for people to watch what I'm about to do. I can't wait for what I get to do right now that I've worked so hard to get here to do. And so in that situation, I remember having a piece about me that it was the highest pressure situation that I had ever been in competition-wise. And I remember back in the box, and my friends told me that I was actually smiling when I backed in the box. I didn't realize I was. But I didn't even hear what time we had to be. I didn't hear anything like that. The only thing I had in mind was going roping that steer. Now, things didn't work out in our favor that year, but I really felt, because I got to that position, because I felt the mental aspects, and because I have mental notes of what I did to prepare to get there, that I conquered a dragon, so to speak. I feel like I really made headway in my competitive drive, because very few people will get into that position. And I feel like just getting there, even though we weren't able to get all the money out of it, I feel like I conquered a dragon. And I think people have to be able to learn how to conquer those dragons, and the only way to conquer is to go. You'll never win those big contests if you don't go to them. So,
what do you say to riders to encourage them to stay focused on their goals and maintain motivation throughout training?
Well, I think alluding back to some of our past conversations is I have to hold them accountable. There's a point of accountability as I have as a coach and a trainer, that if I know what their goals are to begin with, and my job is to help them fulfill those goals, if I see that they're stepping backwards, I'm going to tell them. That's just, I have to do that as a coach. I have to remind them, hey, don't you remember what your goals are? Keep your focus on what's at hand. Don't let this hold you back. That's kind of the mentality I try to keep them in. The goals that they make up, I might help them make those goals, but they have to choose them for themselves, and then we have to take the necessary steps to fulfill those goals. So I think that's the biggest focus is learning what their goals are, and then also having an understanding that this is a hobby. It's supposed to be fun. We're supposed to enjoy this. If you're not enjoying it, then maybe we need to do something else.
And I think it's very encouraging when you're in the driver's seat. It's like, you're here to have fun. You're here because you want to be here. You're here for the goals that you chose to pursue. And then you're just being supported and held accountable to what you said you wanted to do. So it's
100%.
Yeah, it's a very different perspective to feel like, yeah, this is exciting. This is what I get to do. This is what I want to do.
For sure. Get to do. Yeah.
Get to do is the magic.
That is.
Get to do
it. Get to do this.
And yet. We just haven't done it yet.
That's right. I love those words.
Well, tell me about some of the differences you notice in coaching non-pros versus if you're coaching another professional. Or how, and this is kind of related to how you might tailor your approach when you work with people of different levels of experience.
Sure. I think the level of pressure that you put on, when I mean levels of pressure, you're going to ask them to do things that, maybe a beginner wouldn't do. And the beginners, I'm going to be more encouraging and try to point out more of what they do right than what they do wrong. We try to refrain from using the words don't and can't with ropers or with people who are coming for advanced help on their horses and things like that. We're trying to push them to the next level. So there will be a little bit more pressure that we put to them, and there's going to be a little heavier homework we give them when they leave. But I definitely say the pressure and probably the focus is going to be a little bit different when somebody more experienced is coming, as opposed to, a greener than grass.
Yeah. It's really interesting. It really is so key to focus on a moment of progress or something that they've done well. And I was reading a book recently, and they gave an example, because the idea is that you want to apply this to your sport. But they were giving an example, and it really made a lot of sense to me. I hadn't thought about it in that perspective, but they thought, imagine you're going to school, and let's say you're taking a really hard math class or a computer programming class, and it's really hard. And you go in there and you follow along for like the first 5 minutes of the lecture, and then everything else is just, you just have no idea. Well, how is that going to impact you when you leave that lecture if you tell yourself, I don't understand anything the professor said, I can't do this at all, this is just like, I'm going to be such a failure. Right. Or if you go out and you're like, I understand a little more that when I do my first line of code, I need to put like this symbol there. I learned something. Like, you completely shift it if you can just focus on like something that you understand better, because it gives you a foundation to improve on. And so taking that over to your sport is the same way. Like, okay, maybe you fell off your horse and most of it was terrible, but you got on and you remembered to reach down and tighten up your cinch before you went down, right? Like, okay, that's great.
Your width again.
Exactly. And so because it gives you the shift of like, I can do this, I can make improvement, I understand something a little bit better than I did the day before. And it just, that's the way. So it's really, it's top of my mind. It's something that I was reading about recently. What are some things that you think are important for effective communication between a non-pro and a coach, and just for having the most, kind of effective progress together?
Well, one thing that I will say as far as us trainers go is being a little bit more patient. I think there's a lot of things that we do that we take for granted of, that maybe even some things that came to us naturally that we didn't have to work through, that we're trying to help somebody work through. And I think the communication has to be simplified to where, common sense and horse sense are two very different things. And I think as far as our role, it's to be able to explain things to people in a way that will help them understand the not so common knowledge that sometimes we take for granted. I've listened to other people try to teach this, and it comes off fairly condescending. I try to stay away from that. But as far as my non-pros and things like that, they have to be coachable. They have to come with a mind that they're not showing up today to impress me or the trainer. They have to come with the mind that, okay, today I'm going to try to get 1% better doing this or doing that. And I'm going to listen to the coach as he tells me, and I'm going to evaluate how I did on those things by the end of the day. And hopefully that they're just discussing those things with us as the coach and the trainer, is we can be on the same page so we can help them reach those goals and things like that.
Yeah, I think that coachability is it's probably about one of the best things you can have.
For sure.
How do you help riders set goals and measure their progress?
That's a great question. I think us trainers have to let our clients and non-pros know what they're capable of. I think it's our job to tell them, hey, listen, there's lots of people who try pretty hard to do what you're doing, and you're doing it fairly naturally. I think that they have to know where they sit, or else they won't believe it. But I want to be realistic with them too. I want to say, hey, listen, you're not quite ready to ride a horse like that yet. We need one in between. We've got some things we need to work on before you're ready for something like that. We have to be honest, but I would say that the communication just has to be clear, that we have to be on the same page, that the coach has to let them know what they're capable of, and we probably see a little bit more of what they're capable of than they do. And we have to help them believe it. Once we get them to believe it, then, man, that's a whole different ballgame.
How do you approach the mentorship aspect of coaching non-pro riders, and what do you hope they take away from the experience of working with you?
Quite frankly, horses are kind of, for lack of a better term, the mirror to our souls. And I've actually heard people come up here and take lessons or ride horses and then go home and realize that everything they learned that day from that horse pertained to how they were handling their 16-year-old son or handling their husband or wife. So, I mean, horses are mirrors to our soul. And I would say that when people leave here, I want them to feel like they can't wait to come back. I want them to feel like, holy cow, that I learned a lot today, or man, I love the way I felt when I was there. And if we can get people to feel something, if we can get people to enjoy what they're doing here and not destroy anybody's confidence, if we can try to get them to love this as much as we love it, then that's when it gets really fun. That's when people start really having fun with this, is when they start to love it as much as we do.
It's just story time. Can you share any success stories of riders you coached and how their dedication and progress impacted their performance?
Well, if I can be a little bit more forward and embarrassing, you were one of them. But I've had 3 clients in the time that I have been coaching non-pros that got their buckle, their green reiner buckle, in the first year of their showing. And that is not common. Usually it takes the majority of people about 2.5 to 3 years to accomplish something like that. To get it in one season is somewhat unheard of. So I've seen people, yourself included, the dedication with, when they left here, I knew that they were going to work on it at home. That it wasn't once a week lessons with Jeff and then think about it all week and then come back for another lesson with Jeff. It was come ride with Jeff and then go home and think about it for 2 days and then go practice that for 2 days and then come back, and they were on the next level every single time, yourself included. A lot of that had to do with the horsepower that you had, but the dedication that you show, and it obviously pays off. So yeah, I mean, I've had 3 people in the last 7 years that were able to, they found the right horse, they were dedicated to it, they showed the necessary steps that they needed to make to get there, and they did it. And you should pat yourself on the back for that, because there's very few that accomplish that in a short amount of time. And obviously, for me, that's more rewarding to watch people go out and score a point higher than they've ever scored, or achieve that. That's almost more rewarding for me than if I was doing it myself. That's probably one of the reasons I still do this, is because I love what the gratification is when people win doing something they work so hard to do. And it's fun to have a front row seat to that, to see people's dedication and then finally do it. So, absolutely. Absolutely.
One thing I think that you do well, so I'll ask if there's anything that how would you describe this? How do you create a supportive and inclusive training environment for the riders in your program?
Well, I appreciate that. I want this to be a safe haven for people. I want them to feel like when they come here that it's going to be fun. And fun doesn't mean that we're not going to push.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is a place where we listen. And I want to know what somebody's mental or emotional state is before we begin a session, or else it's going to trigger on the horses as well.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it becomes a place where we listen. You know, if there's a lot going on in somebody's life, probably pushing them real hard to do this might not be the best thing to do. And I might back off some things when we're coaching them, or I might, rearrange their goal a little bit. If there's something else that's going on that's more important, we need to focus on that. And I feel like I try to be really mindful of those things, but once again, because I'm a coach, I feel like I get emotionally invested, probably more than I should. I do it with the horses, but I want to, especially with the people we're trying to build their goals and everything, it's pretty hard to not get emotionally invested. Their successes are your successes, and vice versa. So I think that in some ways that would be a weakness of mine, but I'll also call it a strength, is that my clients are more my friends than they are my clients. I feel like we build relationships here and not just coach to non-pro.
I would just say, so is there anything else that you would want to share when it comes to just particularly the mental side of training and competing?
I would just reiterate and push that there's a mentality that winners have that's different than people who do things well. Mm-hmm. Going back, there's a lot of people who do things really well, and there's very few that know how to win.
It's its own skill set.
It is a skill set.
That's what I'm getting obsessed with.
And the only way to be able to practice that is to go. I mean, you can practice a lot of things to be mentally tough, and there's a lot of things that we do here as far as practicing like we compete and competing here and just little contests and things like that. But the only way to learn how you're going to be when you channel those emotions, and when you get there, you have to conquer that dragon. It's the only way to do it. You have to just go be in the pen, and you have to go and experience what it's like to be in those pressure situations.
Yeah. And I hear it's just not running away from those high pressure situations, because I think this part got cut off earlier when I was talking about visualization. Yeah. But it's just that you go, and it can be really hard to replicate that. And so in order to, I found for me to visualize the most effectively at home, because what I was saying before was just that it's when I visualize at home, if I've been to a show, I've been to that arena, I'll start visualizing and I'll feel my heart rate start to rise. I'll feel my muscles get a little tense. And so to practice being able to ride that calmly in my own mind at home, it really is helpful to me to be able to get on my horse in that situation. And I've already started training my brain of, we're going to use these other neural pathways, not the crazy ones.
For sure.
But just that going and not being afraid to fail, not being afraid to, whatever the run is, but just practicing that and putting yourself in there of this is what it is.
Well, and you just said that word, afraid. I never, whether I'm going to show a horse or rope a steer, I hope I never do it because I'm afraid to do so. I mean, those are things that I need to do every single day. I've never been afraid to go and stop a reiner or spin a horse in here. I've never been afraid to rope a steer. What makes me think that when I go to a competition that all of a sudden I'm going to compete out of fear, that I'm afraid that I might do something wrong, that I'm afraid I might miss, or I'm afraid I might, I live by a little sense that a lion should never have to tell anybody that they're a lion, right? Yeah. If I walk into a room as a lion, I shouldn't have to tell anybody that I just showed up. And I need to have the mentality that I'm a lion. And when I go someplace, by the time this is all said and done, everybody's going to know I'm a lion too. But it doesn't matter what everybody else thinks, as long as you know you're a lion yourself. And lions don't have to tell everybody. But lions just go do it.
Just go do it.
So that would be my thing. I try to tell myself I'm a lion, and if I believe it well enough, then I'll be a lion.
I think my final question would be, do you have anything that helps you shift? Because I know you mentioned it, that if you're practicing or if you're showing, you have to switch out of trainer, Jeff, who's teaching horse things, improving things, and going into showman Jeff, who's there to present it with, flair. Are there any things that you do that help you to make that shift?
First and foremost, when it comes to making those shifts, you have to realize that most of your mistakes are not the horse's mistake. So if you've done your hard work and you've trained the horses up to that point, the shift for me is, okay, now horse, you're going to do what I've told you to do. I'm not fixing you now. I'm working on me. And that's a hard one to do. It's a really hard shift. But if all of a sudden if I'm betting my friends and say, okay, let's see who can rope the horse steers the fastest, right? I'm going to get out of trainer mode. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to go compete, and I'm going to let my horse do his job. I've trained it up to this point. Now it's your turn. And so I've learned. It's taken a long time to do that, but I've learned to switch it. Sometimes I'm roping for me, and sometimes I'm roping for the horse. And when you're showing these horses and things like that, when you show up to the show, you're not training anymore. You got to show what you brought, and their mistakes are your mistakes.
Well, that first big thing though is a big thing, which is just deciding that it's different, deciding that you're there to show, to compete, you're not there to train.
For sure. Yeah, you already did that homework here. Yeah. You already worked on that stuff out here. You just go there, handle your emotions, and go show the horse that you practiced here.
Well, thank you so much
for
your time, and thank you for your patience doing this double.
No, I think it's cool what you're doing, and I hope it's successful for you.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Sure appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey there, friends. Nicole here. And I want to start by saying a huge thank you to all of you readers and subscribers of the Resilient Reiner newsletter and podcast. I am truly honored and grateful for the thousands of you who make up this amazing community. For those of you who love Resilient Reiner and have been asking for more, and for those of you who have been wondering how you can support me to do more of this work, I've got good news for you. Introducing Resilient Reiner Premium. This will give you more of the newsletter and podcast you love. As a Resilient Reiner Premium newsletter subscriber, you'll get additional exclusive newsletter episodes and podcasts just for Resilient Reiner Premium. Don't worry, I'll still be putting out free weekly newsletters and podcasts filled with mental coaching goodness for riders. For those of you begging for more, now you've got it. Just click the link in the show notes to sign up. Easy peasy. Also, guys, I am gearing up to launch the mental gym late spring, but before the mental gym opens up again, I am so excited about Resilient Reiner Academy because I get so many questions about confidence as a rider. I think this is just one of the biggest blocks that I see that riders run into that is blocking them from leveling up and really unlocking their true potential in the saddle. So, because I want to give you guys as much as I can, I have been creating this amazing course that I am going to drop in the next month here, all about confidence for riders. So in the mental gym, we go over everything and it's live coaching. We get into the details of you and your horse and your mind. And this course is going to be pre-recorded so you can go through it completely on your schedule. And we are going to get into the nitty-gritty of how to build your confidence as a rider. I'm talking literally, I take you step by step with at-home exercises and homework for you to do of like, here's what you need to do before your ride. Here's what you need to do after your ride. And I hold your hand and I will teach you to be a confident rider. And just so much more than I can get into in any free training or even in the mental gym because we cover so much. So I just really wanted to create this resource for you guys, for you riders of like, let me hold your hand and take you down the trail here. I will teach you to be a confident rider. So if you're interested in this, I'm putting up a wait list so you can be first notified as soon as it goes live, resilientreineracademy.com. You can get on the wait list and I'm going to put it in the show notes. Okay. I am just so excited to give this to you guys because I can't wait to see the improvement and the amazing impacts it's going to have for you and your horses. So anyway, sending you guys all of my love, happy trails, and go ride your horse.